2025 has been weirdly good for anime. I don't even necessarily mean that in a, oh my god, we're so back, anime is saved kind of way, because that would imply the last few years weren't really all that good, which feels like it's a bad thing to say, especially given 2024's anime lineup was such a stacked list for sure. But if I'm being honest with you all here, 2025 was a big one for me personally. Because this is the first year in quite some time that I have followed weekly anime releases for more than 1 or 2 animes per season, and followed it for every season this past year. Sure, I've kept up with the anime of the times in 2022 to 2024 after a few years of binging anime on my personal list and playing catch-up for a hot minute, but to say that I was someone who would follow these series week to week during this period was unfortunately not the case for me until this year finally got me back to tune in properly. So, given that we're in we're so back territory in terms of my week-to-week watching experience, I felt it best to do what I do best in terms of talking about topics like this on my platform. Make a long as fuck video discussing all my thoughts on every single anime I watched this year. Let's run down some basics right now, however. I didn't watch every goddamn anime that came out this year. I am now 29 years old as of this video coming out. I do not have the time to be watching multiple weekly animes anymore. Your girl has too many other hobbies to tend to that take up too much brain power. However, what you're gonna get from me is talking about my personal watch list of the year is something of which you won't get from any big YouTubers. Honesty in my picks, not a lot of popular animes, and, most importantly, a lot of that good gay shit. So let's get started with the thing that got me put back on track, as it were, with my Learn 2025 winter anime pick, Ave Mujica: The Die Is Cast. Now, I already made a big-ass video on my thoughts regarding Ave Mujica a few months ago, so for the sake of not repeating a lot of my thoughts from that video, I will heavily suggest that you check it out for the sake of that. But also because a lot of my general thoughts on the state of modern music anime as a whole will become a recurring trend with this list. So for the sake of this video, I will go over some thoughts I did touch upon in that video simply due to the topic of it at the time focusing differently. I feel like Ave Mujica's plot was one of the most engaging and gripping stories of this year. It left me hanging on the edge week to week with how absolutely addicting its storyline regarding these emotionally fucked up girlies could be, and how it more or less continued off one of the best Bandori seasons ever in its My Girls finale. On top of that, among everything I had mentioned in that video and then some, I felt like the anime seriously had some of the best music for a musical anime in a hot minute, some of the best animation for musical segments in a musical anime period, and, let's be real here, some of the most emotionally unstable bitches this side of your local Discord polycule. But I'd be damned if they didn't make this show feel like such an enjoyable watch week to week. My only real complaint is that it felt like a middle point of a 3-part story for sure, with It's My Go feeling like a contained story until its ending episode focusing on pivoting to Ave Mujica, and then the titular band not even being together for half of their anime. With story beats and character arcs that very much feel like it could have been fleshed out so much more if they weren't obviously going to marry the two sides for a third series which only got announced the day after Ave Mujica's last episode aired. Had that not happened, this honestly would have sunk lower on my list personally and on the grander scheme. To that end, I want to give Ave Mujica my award for best representation of a poorly represented mental health disorder as Mortis' portrayal of dissociative identity disorder, after years of having it be portrayed as an antagonistic force or misdiagnosed entirely on screen, was finally shown with, well, more grace than most media to this point, but it can still do better for sure. But for what we got in regards to this, I feel like especially this series was absolutely the right thing that got me hooked back in for good reason. As for when I first caught up to it when it was airing around episode 7 or 8, I ended up binging it and then followed on week to week until it ended, and it more or less set the tone for my watching experience this past year. As Autumn's lineup was quickly another set of curveballs for anime, and then some, but not without throwing me right back into the fray for toxic bandmate music anime, which immediately continued on with Another anime that I discussed in the aforementioned Anime Mujica video, but one I personally feel like I should have made more of a mention of now, given the fact it was more or less a footnote in the overall discussion point of banned anime in modern times, with Rock as a Lady's Modesty. You love S-class nonsense? You love rebelling against societal archetypes? You like girls in private school outfits who will scream the F word and middle finger you while they do it? Well, honey, you should give this series some love. With the series itself focusing on how two deeply contrasting characters and their lives are in, they're expanding out to a full quartet of the group in Lilisa, Otaha, Tina, and Tamaki, all coming together and dealing with each other's jagged edges and clashing personalities both on and off the stage, even if it really focused on them before they even get to the stage in the first place. But it also, much like Ave Mujica, has some insanely well animated music bits which, given it was animated by Bandai Namco Productions, should surprise anybody on that front. But what should surprise you on it is how they managed to blow away most of the other music animes and how they showcase the animation of the performances as well. Because while Ave Mujica put focus on the technical aspects and remaining as on point as possible for musical moments during the show to make it seem as though the viewer is actively in a concert ran by the band itself, Rock as a Lady's Modesty more or less said, how about we just make it look like a shonen anime with the amount of detail on sweat and detail on gritting of teeth and what else during the performances? All while presenting music throughout which has no vocals within it, meaning that it's all focused on the people performing the music in the series, which, given it was all performed and motion captured by the IRL group Bandmade, who also performed the opening theme song to the anime itself, so it's just as much a promotional material for them as it is this series. To that end, if I had to give Rock as a Lady's Modesty one thing worthy of an award, it's how much they managed to marry the S-claps tropes of high society discussions with weirdly sexually ambiguous tones like Marimite or Otoboku, and the brutish nature of rock music animes like Nana and Beck together in such a way that it made it a fun watch to watch from beginning to end. So, fuck it. Rock Modesty gets the Best Split Personality Anime Award, fitting that of one of its main characters in Otaha being such a split gal herself in the way she acts. However, if you think Bandai Namco Pictures were done with anime in this season, you'd be wrong, as this was the season we also got. So it's hard to imagine that, given how hyped up it was by the time it was released, that the alternate universe Universal Century Gundam anime co-produced by Studio Kara and Sunrise, while being directed by Hideaki freaking Anno himself, ended up being a footnote in the year 2025. And yet, here we are, with me telling you that it wasn't even the first anime that I thought of when I went back to spring 2025's anime, which, given its pedigree behind it, is a bit depressing given it had such promise behind it. The first 3 episodes were given a theatrical cut even, for fuck's sake. But I've been teasing you on my thoughts regarding this since July. So what the hell do I think of this series actually? It's mid. Look, Anno really wanted to make his Universal Century-based Char's Counterattack fanfiction a reality, and good on him. He even had Yoji Inakido working with him on this as well for good measure, and you can bloody well tell that it is done by him, as the anime basically turns into Fully Cooley when you're on the colony, and Char's Counterattack 2 when in space. Which is to say, the turn and pacing of this 12-episode Gundam anime really had a lot to be desired, and if I am being honest here, given we just came off arguably the most peak of peaks in G-Witch a year prior, this really did not live up to either of its residual hype nor the hype of the people working on it. The story is a bit of a mess, to the point I was both excited and confused at the end of the back half of episodes at times. The motivations of our main trio of new characters and their weird love triangle as a result is fucking weird, and it feels like both an attempt to queerbait after G-Witch is fumbling, and also trying to double down on Bandai's weird heteros-only vibe after the fact. Which is to say, again, that this series really could have either been doubled to be more narratively focused, committed to one vibe or another, or, alternatively, just have been something else entirely, and this probably would have been remembered a lot more fondly. Hell, if they had just made a Gundam series from the cockfighting that they did in the first half, that alone would be a much better Gundam anime than this did in the end. I give it the most fumbled bag award off that merit alone, because how in the fuck do you fumble something this amazing in premise? Anyway, let's talk about a good Bad Dye Sunrise collab anime. You ever watched an idol or magical girl anime and wished you could see what would happen if the series took elements from the other genre and blended it in with some weirdly poignant social commentary on body image issues, parasocial relationships, social media obsession, grooming from internet personalities, and the expectations of your own dreams all within 12 episodes? Well, Mayabashi Witches is basically that, all wrapped up in some Bandai Namco's Sunrise dual production glory. Following the tenure of a quintet of wannabe witches under the guise of a flower shop in Mayabashi, being trained by a mysteriously sassy interdimensional being known as Kirape, our 5 girls navigate the wants and desires of a series of people who come into the shop and, through their powers as well as the desires of those they take care of week to week. All while navigating their own desires being reflected in those they choose to help. Even hitting a bit too close to home for them as they have to face their own issues as much as those around them need to as well. It was a surprising series to enter the seasonal canon this year, and one I honestly didn't see a lot of people really talking about as much as they should. Unfortunately, those I did see talking about it weren't as enthused as I was watching each episode come out when it did, including its ending falling a bit flat according to some. To which I say, I think this series twists and turns week to week with how it hit home, with some very well sought after truths from modern audiences in the way that it portrays issues such as body dysmorphia and the way that body image issues can impact people day to day. How social media and the obsession over posting and follower accounts and parasocial relationships tied into it can more often than not be toxic. And as well, how grooming from online creators has become such a commonplace thing that, unfortunately, it does paint a very realistic picture about how that kind of thing can be very prevalent, to the point I'd applaud the series for deciding to showcase these topics in a 12-episode anime, which could have been a fluffy villain of the week nonsense. But by the end, I was applauding this series for giving it such a nuanced take on the subjects involved in the genre, which I honestly think we'd never get it again from. So Mayabashi Witches gets the Dark Horse of the Year award for being the one series I think you should absolutely seek out if you're wanting a different kind of idol or magical girl anime, or simply wanting more anime that tackle more down-to-earth topics in a more serious manner. But if you do want a more traditional magical girl anime, so, fair warning now, Princession is one of the only anime I'm going to have to put a massive asterisk on right now because technically it's ongoing into winter 2026. So everything I am about to talk about is regarding an incomplete version of an anime. It could very well change with the final 12 episodes releasing next season. But for now, here's my thoughts. I've mentioned many times in passing now that Princession is the perfect intersecting point between modern magical girl silliness and girl power to Symphogear's badass women powered by music taking on evil that are also powered by music. But it does both in a way that actively makes me think this might very well be a cultural reset for the genre again. And yes, while I am very aware that this year does have your Precures and the like still airing, I will 100% state that this is the best magical girl anime of this year because of what I'm about to go through. Well, that, and I admittedly didn't watch that season of Precure yet. It is on my list when I eventually get up to date on Precure, however. But for what Princession has to offer, god damn that this series deliver and then some. If you felt a bit blasé about magical girl anime for a while, I get it, but I would highly recommend if you watch the first 12 episodes of this and try not to get hooked, as from episode 1, this had me going bonkers over the premise and then some. And the fact that it has somehow managed to keep this momentum going through to now, amazing stuff, honestly. Absolutely worth your time. The main trio of characters are the best group in a magical girl anime I've seen in a hot minute, the story is impeccable, and the music? Oh god, injected into my veins immediately! Again, the Symphogear vibes are here from the jump, expected to be honest given that the creative team has Symphogear's DNA practically embedded into it by the same people who brought us that anime and then some. So to see them take out the battle shonen aspects of Symphogear and, to an extent, magical girl lyrical Nanaha, and just give us a music-based magical girl anime directly? Brilliant stuff. Also, it helps that its villains are a boy band made up of various degrees of twinks and twunks, and the second villain team is a bunch of dolls, and both of them are led by a respective giant woman mommy-dommy on either side. So, you know, it's got vibes, that's for sure. However, while it is 100% getting the Best Magical Girl Anime Award for the year, it is also getting the worst downgrade in openings between its first and second openings. I mean, just listen to the hype being downgraded between each of these. That is my one lone complaint about this series out of the way. Go check it out, it is well worth your attention. But before we round out spring, let's talk about an anime which technically started in spring, but just wrapped up this season in autumn, just for a bit of fun. If you followed the channel trajectory by this point, you know by now that this year was the year I got corrupted into the moe horse girl gacha hell that is Uma Musume Pretty Derby, with the first 3 anime seasons and the 2 movies of it being my gateway into the franchise as a whole. And I alluded to this in my video discussing it, but having now fully caught up to the series itself, I can safely say that Cinderella Grey is peak. Following on the journey of Ogre Cap's run from 1987 to 1990, Cinderella Grey shows us the legendary ashen-haired Uma's run before she was relegated to retirement when Special Week came to town, and it very much takes from the franchise's later parts, in particular the vibe of the series from beginning of a new era onwards in its presentation. It does still have its very comedic moments as expected for the Uma Musume franchise by now, but they're a lot more subdued and grounded in their execution compared to the shenanigans presented in Season 1 and 2. Maybe even Season 3 for a good measure, despite how much more grounded that season was by comparison. It's also very much leaning into the sports shonen aspects as well, with the back half presenting some of the most thrilling bollocks that makes you wonder if they took their power scaling from Dragon Ball Super all of a sudden, with how insane it gets at times. In fact, it could be argued that this is basically the template for the franchise that has been in place since arguably the back half hits of Road to the Top and Beginning of a New Era. New Era's influence being felt the most in this series as the effects of each character's signature moves being presented with the same style as the moments of intensity within New Era during its races. I'd argue, however, that Cinderella Grey especially is where the franchise is going to be going in its anime marketing going forward, and I feel that to revert back to the early series silliness given how intense the stakes and vibes of this series have now become would be a shame in all honesty. And especially given that there is a confirmed second full season of the show in production that came out a few weeks before the finale aired, and especially with the anime's cliffhanger of an ending for sure, it needs to be said that this is very much going to be one of the biggest franchises in Japan and globally for the years to come, if it hasn't already by this point. If you're already an Uma fan, it's probably already been binged, but if you ever needed to be convinced to check out this franchise, I would 100% have Cinderella Grey be your starting line, with giving it my Best Sports Anime Award for good measure alongside telling you that this was my silver medal on Anime of the Year, which already had stiff competition. But hey, this wasn't the only thing that Cygames Pictures was doing this year, as summer gave us the aptly titled Starting off our Summer of Gay is the boy love anime that had everyone obsessed this past year for many different reasons. The Summer Hikaru Died, animated by Cygames Pictures and based off the hit manga that was absolutely the slow burn boy love horror anime that I needed. And if y'all watched the collab video I did with Hunter this year where I dissected a lot of boy love, you know why this was my jam. The high school relationship between Yoshiki and Hikaru, or rather an alien parasite taking the form of Hikaru, following a tragic death which kicks off the events of this story, blossoms throughout the entire 12-episode first season, with Cygames giving us a second season in the near future. And my fucking god, between the tense relationship of Yoshiki having to reckon with the fact that the entity masquerading as Hikaru is not his beloved friend, yet still wants to be by his side, reckoning with his feelings towards Hikaru in spite all of this, as well as the deeds that this entity is performing to the town that they live in, all the while having to grieve for his actual friend's death and not feel like he's going insane, all the while the plot with a bunch of hunters trying to kill off his entity unfolds. Yeah, this series fucks so hard. Not only that, but it's the fact that it's very much a queer anime within horror, something in which we do not get to see that often mixed together, allows it to be seen in a light which, in my opinion anyway, makes for this to be one of the best combinations that came out of this year. For what it's worth, however, I will say that the series can feel like a slog if you're used to the regular intensity or all or nothing approach that most series of its kind can be guilty of. I implore you, however, to watch through the entire experience, as this very much well worth your patience and well worthy of your viewing eyes for certain. Cygame's picture is very much ruled this year, and with Cinderella Grey for certain. But if you want a damn good boy love anime, this is it. For that, it gets my Best Yaoi Anime of the Year award by a long shot, but if you think we're done with the gays, we haven't even scratched the surface of what this year has given us. You ever wanted to watch a Yuri series that was so chaotic and raunchy in its comedy that it actively made you wonder what the hell was going on in the production of it? Well, Bad Girl is certainly your vibe for sure. Following the antics of Yu Tani's attempts to become a delinquent to try and get the attention and affection of Disciplinary Council President Atari Mizuki, even resorting to asking seemingly actual delinquent friend of hers, Suzu Suzukaze, for help despite having her own crush on Yu Tani, the series is as chaotic as that love triangle explanation is already. It runs the gambit of your typical high school rom-com shenanigans, while also throwing in some really raunchy jokes like every other minute. I mean, you got pet play dynamics, the girls having body pillows of each other, and the two main rival love interests both conspiring to make our main girls so flustered that you have to wonder if they're actually foes or just keeping a facade going. Between all of that as well, you have a preschool fan club for Atori which seeks to cause strife for you, a pathetically adorable wannabe idol, and a siscon dynamic going on as a rival for you towards Atori. Needless to say, you can get easily overwhelmed by what the series will throw at you if you're not prepared for it. But I will very much say that Bad Girl, while it is a very fun time all considered, is not for everyone. If you got icked out by anything I just said, I do not blame you, but at the same time, you're also a fucking pussy. But if you enjoyed anything of what I just said and think it might be your vibe, then I think you should 1000% check this show out. It gives off vibes of Setokai Yakuin Domo, but for the lesbos, if that makes any sense to the old heads in the viewing audience. And I give it my Most Chaotic Anime of the Year award, because holy shit, some of the stuff in this show has to be seen to be believed at times. And for those of you wondering why that honor isn't going to another anime on this list, well, it's because it deserves a much higher award. It's been 15 years. 15 years of teasing. 15 years of patiently waiting. 15 years of losing out hope with Trigger releasing a streak of mid after mid shows after kill a kill. But it finally happened. We finally got a sequel to Panty and Stocking with Garter Belt. And it was so worth the wait. I could have easily been satisfied with another season of the same shtick from the first season, just with updated sensibilities and memes added in. I sure as hell wouldn't have been highly praising it as I am about to, but I would have been satisfied nonetheless. But they didn't just do that. They somehow managed to not only properly try to explain the ending of Season 1 in the first episode, create a brand new status quo for the series, and actually make the returning fans give a shit about what is about to come in for this series. Most of the original voice cast came back for the Japanese dub. The English dub cast was completely recast and caused some minor controversy. Jury is still out on which cast is better, but let's be real, any dub that doesn't have notoriously white Chris Sabat voicing a black priest is honestly the better call. Teddy Lloyd came back with new original songs which fuck from front to back. Special mention going to the theme song of the Polystyrene Angels, which sounds like a heavenly Backstreet Boys song, and the combination of the Demon Sisters, Anarchy Sisters themes, which goes so fucking hard. And they went above and beyond to make it hit that much harder. Every single week a new episode came out, and save for one weird anthology episode near the end, it basically did just that and then some. This series was everything it needed to be and more, and yet they are somehow still able to keep us on the hook for a potential third season. Do I feel like it's necessary? Not really. Am I going to be hyped when they eventually release the third season as I was when this got finally released? Hell yes I will! And for managing to somehow overcome the accursed 15-year production hell timescape, I give New Panty and Stocking the Reverse Duke Nukem Award for Best Anime Stuck in Production Hell that got out and kicked ass! We're still trying to workshop the name, so allow us a bit to try and work through it. But speaking of animes that were hotly anticipated after years of the studio being away from them for, Kyoto Animation has been dormant mostly for a while, only popping up every so often for a sequel series or maybe to give us an update on something big every so often. But nothing has really been sticking aside from new Sound Euphonium content since Violet Evergarden. So of course that's why they decided to adapt this fucking series!
Hello, dear, my friend.
City the Animation, based on the manga of Nichijou mangaka Keiji Arakawa, was one of the most hotly anticipated animes of this past year by a long shot. The minute it got announced for summer 2025, I'm almost certain stalking KyoAni shot up to levels it hadn't seen since 2013 at least. That's how good of an announcement this was. And if you enjoyed the zany antics, the flat-out insane cast of characters, and the variable levels of jokes per minute that will make you wonder what kind of anime you're even watching from Nichijou, but want something shorter and more heartwarming at times, then boy howdy, this is for you. With an ensemble cast so big that they have a musical number together by the end of the series run, no cap, that actually happens, you're bound to find one storyline that will keep you engaged from beginning to end and make you invest yourself into the antics of this one lone city. KyoAni's style for Keiji's work is immaculate and as bright as ever, showing that they have not slowed down in their way of being able to be a chameleon with their art styles when needed and, above all else, showcase what they are good at. Heartwarming shenanigans for damn near everyone to enjoy and in a bite-sized format so you don't get too overwhelmed at that. I would talk about characters or plot lines, but honestly it's one that I very much would say it's best to watch on your own time and on your own terms. Hence why I'm giving this the best revival anime both for Arakawa as a creator and for KyoAni as an animation studio, because goddamn did both of them really need this one to work out for them. Now this one on the other hand was a very last minute, out of field choice for myself, as I don't really watch that much seinen unless the premise really hooks me in. And while I had some level of interest in this premise in the way of it being arguably a nice little show that could pass the 3-episode litmus test on if it was good or not, by episode 1's conclusion I was already saying that this was going to be a keeper. And I'm happy I made that choice. Because make no mistake, Secrets of the Silent Witch ended up being a sleeper for myself as the premise of a shy sage who, despite her immense power as one of the 7 sages of the world, has become a recluse being tasked by this gender-looking sage in Louise to take her place as the heir to the kingdom's guardian. Adapting a new identity and going undercover to the same school, shenanigans occur while also reckoning with class politics galore as she deals with assassination attempts on the prince's life, while also maybe falling in love with him. Who can really say? All in all, it makes for a nice break in the summer of Gay, one of which kept me hooked week to week like the best of this year all considered. Only thing I can really badly say against it is that I wish we had a confirmed season 2 on the horizon because I really want to know what happens next with a cliffhanger like that. However, that's my only main concern that doesn't come down to nitpicks if I'm being honest here. It's a great series from front to back and it gets my best seinen of the year. And, if I'm being honest here, it's one of the lone animes I've watched this year that I am actively waiting to see a sequel to. So it also gets the personal award for most anticipated sequel for later years. Studio Gokumi, I hope you know what you're doing here. Don't make us wait 3 years for a sequel like you did with Yuki Yuna, goddammit. But, let's wrap up our summer of Gay with arguably the anime which took this year by storm, if I am to be honest here.
1, 2, 3. 人よ人よに人見知り。2人以上での立ち回り。
Watanabe had to be on this list of discussion at some point, let's be clear about this. Not even just because it arguably took over the seasonal discussions when it came out, but I'd argue it became an instant hit for queer fans across the board. I mean, what other anime has come out this year which looks at the broad spectrum of relationships and very much looks at how they are all examined and even deconstructing the harem genre for yuri anime in such a way that, honestly speaking here, is setting the bar high for any more to come. And what I mean by that is that Watanabe's plot of following the misadventures of a high school socialite falling in love with a high school NEET who somehow got pulled into the popular girls group, which also includes the girl that she and the fans are actually crushing hard on. What follows is the general vibes of what you would expect, the dramas that unfold with miscommunication and occur, which make you think that it's gonna wind up like every other yuri anime that came before it. And antics abound that make your local BlueSky polycule look like a walk in the park. But it then surprises you by having the characters showing genuine growth and moments of brilliance throughout the 3 arcs of each girl that are presented in the 4 episode blocks, to the point where you get decent growth between our main girl Ranako, Mai, Ajisaji, and Satsuki, with the 4th arc focusing on Kahoru being released just recently. But for what we have seen to this point, holy shit, this series is the best. The fact that a Yuri anime finally goes down a more grounded direction than falling for the same shitty tropes over and over again would be enough, but you add in the fact that this series arguably has some amazing level characters behind it, and some really good twists by the end of its 3rd arc that makes you really excited for what's to come. Yeah, it's really no surprise that not only does this get the best Yuri of the year, but it's also my anime of the year. I know it's a bit early to say it, but yeah, it's that fucking good that I'll tell you right now that Watanabe is 100% at the top of my list, and it kept me hooked from episode 1 all to the way to the ending that, while I fell behind on some anime last year, this was the one I felt I didn't want to fall behind on. But we're only 1 season away from the end of my little discussion points, so what did I watch in the autumn months of this year? Well, let's just say that we start ourselves off on Watanabe's other side of the coin.
どうか終わらせてよ何もかも奪って
This monster wants to eat me, or Watanabe for short, is basically what happens when you allow monster fuckers to write a Yuri anime, and while they're also terminally depressed while they do so, because holy fucking shit, while this series is good, it can be a fucking time. Hell, the premise of clinically suicidal high school meets a merfolk beast who says she'll eat her to end her life as a romantic gesture, while protecting her from other yokai alone would be one fucked up way of going about a story as it is. But then it proceeds to kick you in the shins, gut punch you, and throw a good old stab in the backside for good measure by each episode rolling on week to week, as we're introduced to more yokai, including main character Hinako's best friend Miko is, as well as Shiori, a yokai of the fox variety, who is overtly clingy of Hinako while also being a rival to Shiori. The tension makes for the first half being a good solid start, but then the second half happens and I am just left heartbroken more and more, to the point where I'd argue if you're prone to suicidal ideation yourself or have recovered from such thoughts, you might want to skip out on this one because holy fuck does this get bleak in the latter half. Like full on, I don't know if I would ever come back to this unless the second season were made kind of bleak. This isn't to say I didn't enjoy Watanabe, but I think it is genuinely a good series, but there are some small aspects that would keep me from recommending it to those who aren't like myself, as in a mentally healthy individual who's arguably described as a Pollyanna at the best of times. If you're less on that scale, this may not be for you. To that end, this is getting my best depressing anime of the year, because holy fuck, what else could I put in for this series except depression like no other? I do await a sequel, however, but I am content if this is where it ends for now. Being honest here. On the other side of things, despite the name making you think you're gonna get vibes akin to Girls' Last Tour from it, Touring After the Apocalypse is here to give you some much needed good vibes galore as the only survivors of a global apocalypse go out and explore remains of the world. The two girls, a human named Yoko and a cyborg named Irie, are sent out of their bunker having been told it's safe to go out and explore at last, seeing off plenty of locations throughout post-apocalyptic Japan that were spots that Yoko's big sister had visited previously prior to the end of the world. Riding along together on each location of a motorbike, which it gives kind of a Super Cub vibe for those who watched that show when it came out a few years back, makes it a very good and relaxing experience from front to back, while also having some moments here and there that emotionally pull at your heartstrings at times. And amidst the anime in question that arguably would break your heart this season, while it did seem at times that this would get close to a Girls' Last Tour vibe, it became more and more absurd the more the series went along despite the fun locales that they would go and see, to the point where it makes you question what the fuck is actually happening in this apocalypse. But for a nice little relaxing series to cleanse your palate if you were watching more harder animes to swallow this season, I'd very much say that this is the best slice of life in the year in my eyes, which isn't really a surprise given that Studio Nexus, who are responsible for Comic Girls and Wakaba Girl, are behind it. On the topic of quirky slice of life anime, however, so I want to open this up by asking how many of you watched New Game when it came out nearly a decade ago. Did you enjoy it? If so, do you enjoy Disaster Game mangakas? If so, you're gonna love mangaka's weirdly wonderful workplace. So on the backdrop of a mangaka's team and her editor that may or may not be falling for while they work together, even despite the antics of the collective singular brain cell being passed around from person to person as the series goes along. Anime by Studio Voil, whose only credit before this was on last year's Acro Trip, which is a late bloom anime for me as well. I feel that personally that they were very much in their element with this series, and its disaster gay elements which left me laughing and feeling some damn good emotions week to week. By this point, it gets hard to differentiate most animes of this nature given that slice of life is such a derivative genre, but if you also enjoy a good semi-Yuri slice of life anime with some comedical, nice elements of a nice profession within it like the aforementioned New Game, I'm gonna be real, you're probably gonna love mangaka's antics and joyous vibes from episode 1 of this. And given what it was for me personally, I'm giving it my best anime to switch your brain off to award. It's what it says on the tin, don't look at me thinking you're gonna get something else from this. But we've only got 2 more left and 1 left probably for this entire year, so let's get to it with... Say, are you tired of the isekai tropes? Are you tired of the villainesses always being these cold-hearted bitches that look so pretty? Don't you just want to give the heroine who is so up her own ass and has an inflated sense of ego as a villain, and to have the supposed villainess go on a campaign of fisticuffs revenge to beat the shit out of them? Well, may I ask for one final thing, is that in spades for you? Because following along from years of being mistreated by societal class structures and her own fiancé being taken from her with this pink-haired narcissist who came from another world, our main protagonist, Scarlett L. Van Diemen, has decided, fuck this shit, everyone's getting socked in the mouth, before going out on her own to wage a campaign against the royal hierarchy of the world around her and to try to make the world right, while also taking down this pink-haired bitch in Terraneza who's aligned with the opposing faction in this world. However, Scarlett has the backing of the heir of the throne and Julius, who also operates as a supposed love interest for Scarlett in the wake of her piece-of-shit fiancé getting the boot, who is very much aware of Scarlett's demeanor and feisty attitude and constantly just goes, bet, every time she tries to get under his skin. The series, as a result, is an amazing romp which made it absolutely the highlight of the autumn season for sure, contesting the likes of Spy Family Season 3 and My Hero Academia's final season as one of the best ones to be following for its mass appeal and generally wonderful vibe from front to back, making this just as much a watch for casuals as it is diehards, I feel. It does very much suffer from bloat in the middle part before kicking back into gear in its final 4 episodes, but the middling parts are still very much enjoyable and ones I found to be a joy to watch week to week as well. Despite the conflict at times feeling a bit interesting to have to sit through when it became clear they'd find any and all reason to get Scarlett to punch out some cunts week to week. However, for its brilliant subversion of the villainess and isekai tropes, its genuinely heartfelt romantic moments, and its damn well engaging plot that kept me hooked on from week to week, it takes a very solid place as the best I wish that were me of anime of the year, because who wouldn't want to be Scarlett in our current hell world? And leading us into 2026 with its continuation going on for the most part of next year, it's... You've heard me talk about Digimon in the past on this channel, and I will very much say that this is definitely, without a doubt, a franchise I will keep coming back to every chance I can because of the nostalgia, as well as in general because of how great some of the seasons can be. However, given the last series and Ghost Game came out in 2021 to 2022, and there hasn't been a truly universally acclaimed season since well before Adventure 2020's run, many had their eyes on Beat Break as the next truly great season of Digimon to come out of Toei at last. And while we only have 12 episodes released as of time of writing and potentially time of releasing this video, I will absolutely say while it definitely does have some moments where it failed to get me invested in the beginning, that quickly went away the moment the 3rd episode kicked things into gear in such a way that I immediately went full invested into this. With a brand new concept for the series that feels not too dissimilar to how Cyber Sleuth and Time Stranger have shown the world building of it all to be, while throwing in some allusions to class division in society and how Digimon are treated as undesirables by upper class society in this world, instead of some cute little friends like in every other series to this point. It truly made the journey of the tragic, romantic loner Tomorone's pal Gekomon to be one that has been a joy to follow along with. Although it very much helps that the series does in fact have some really rad Digimon designs in this one, Chirpmon's evolution line being one of them, and let me tell you, I could immediately tell this one is furry based in particular by the designs of Wolvermon and Murasamemon respectively. Like, you look at both of them and tell me the designs of this series weren't just going back to Tamers in regards to the design and knowing exactly why Renamon was as popular as she was. And speaking of Tamers, realistically speaking here, this may have the best plotline and best week-to-week episode structure that has been in the series since Tamers in all opinion. This may potentially not be the case as the series keeps on going. However, the second arc, which just started out in the Tactics Saga that just debuted as of recording this video, I will tell you this right now, if you loved yourself some classic Digimon, and if you've been disappointed in later Digimon series that have been coming out recently, Beat Break may just be well for you. So I am giving it the best potential award for this year, because there's realistically no other thing I can really say at this point, given the fact that we're 12 episodes in to a very much long-running series that will go until at least the third quarter of next year. So I'm hoping the best for Beat Break, and honestly, it's a really good way to end off 2025 and go into 2026 for certain. As I'm recording this video, the winter 2026 anime season has just picked up, and I have already started watching my picks for this season already. And I'm looking at ways of being able to discuss my opinions week to week. I might start doing shorts again. I might start compiling them into a longer form video on top of that as well for certain weeks to come. However, I want to let you all know that I am going to be starting to follow weekly anime content on this channel, and this is my way of being able to start rounding it all up each year, and honestly, I'm excited for what 2026 has to come. So, until next time, I hope that you have all enjoyed me rambling on this video, and I will see you all in 2026 for hopefully a lot better anime and a lot of good stuff to come. Janmata.